Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message
With Brady Randall.
In preparation for Memorial Day week, we wanted to take a little diversion and focus on John chapter 10, verses 1 through 18. And I would entitle this section this week as A Life Laid Down, looking at how Jesus, the Good Shepherd, laid down his life for his sheep. I don't take the freedom that we have in this country for granted. The incredible bravery of men and women who willingly sacrificed their lives so that we could enjoy the freedom that we do. I was reading a book called Into Enemy Waters, which is the story of a man named George Morgan and the underwater demolition teams who were forerunners to the Navy SEALs. And one of their first assignments was on Omaha Beach on D-Day. He and his team had only swimming trunks, goggles, and a knife, and they went underwater in cold temperatures with bullets flying all around them as the first line of offense against the Japanese. And he would later go into further deployments in Hawaii and the Pacific. He would swim up, gather intel, and then try to detonate dangerous bombs and booby traps. And though he survived, many in his team did not. But the bravery and the danger are absolutely mind-blowing to me. And that's the kind of sacrifice that many, many, many men and women have faced over the years so that you and I could be free. Well, in John 10, 1 to 18, we read about Jesus who claims to be the shepherd, who willingly lays down his life for his sheep. Verses 1 through 6 read like this. Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by another way is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used a figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. So in chapter 10, there's no break from chapter 9, and Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees who are absolutely incredulous that Jesus had just healed a man on the Sabbath. And Jesus had claimed that these same Pharisees were spiritually blind even though they had their physical sight, and now he picks up the metaphor here in chapter 10 that he is the shepherd and they are false shepherds. Now, shepherding was very common in Israel. Many of the leaders in the Old Testament were shepherds: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and David. And shepherds would take their sheep to a pen, which was often a courtyard near or beside a house and bordered by a stone wall in which several different people or families had kept their sheep. And many times there'd be a door or a gate that would be guarded by the gatekeeper. And in these first few verses, we see a scene described as a shepherding scene guarded by a watchman at night. The shepherd in the village would bring the sheep in, and there would be different flocks to gather in one pen, and they would enter one at a time, and the shepherd would stop each one with his rod and check them out. And after examining them, he would let them in. The shepherd would sleep, and the hired hand would guard the sheep at night. And if you climbed in by another way than the gate, then you probably have bad motives and intentions. The shepherd would call each sheep by name, often giving them their own names, and each sheep belonging to the flock recognized the voice of the individual shepherds. So what this passage makes clear is that the genuine sheep of Jesus know and listen to his voice. And so I want to ask you today, do you discern the voice of the shepherd? And how do you distinguish the voice of Jesus from every other voice? There are so many voices vying for our attention these days, but God is inviting us to know and listen and respond to his voice above all others. The only way to know his voice is to listen intently. And the primary way that Jesus has spoken and is still speaking today is through the Bible, which he inspired. And it will be hard to discern the voice of Jesus if we're not consistently putting ourselves in a position to hear him, reading and studying and applying the Word of God. And today you're taking time to listen to his voice through this podcast. And my prayer for you, my prayer for me, is that we would silence the outside voices of the world so that we could truly hear the voice of the shepherd who laid down his life for the sheep.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.